What's going on, football fans? It's time once again for another rendition of the Pound for Pound. I'm your host, J.R. Clark, and today we're going to be talking about potential breakout stars. Maybe not stars in the sense of like national level, but I think I'm going to try to put forth some names and some players that have the potential to become household names, at least among Falcon fans. I kind of got this idea from my partner Toby D's video when he talked about John Kaminsky and his potential role on this defense. And I was like, well, there's got to be more than just one. Who are some other players that we might not be thinking about as we head into training camp? Some people that I think that you might need to keep an eye on and see how they perform. So without further ado, I think I'm going to break it down. I'm going to give you 3 on the offense and 3 on the defense. Okay, so let's get started on the offense. We're going to ping pong back and forth. All right, on the offensive side, the guy who's got me real interested and that I have got my eye on, at least going into training camp, is none other than the judge, Ito Smith. Now, why am I concerned about Ito Smith? I'm not concerned. I'm actually quite excited about Ito because he reminds me a lot of Devontae Freeman. And now, why is that a good thing? Well, if Devontae ends up getting hurt again, it'd be real good to have another back that has the same style that Devontae does. And, with Devontae's, injury history, it's not a stretch to think that he might not make it all the way through the season. I mean, I want him to. I think Devontae is probably one of the best backs that we've had in a while, at least since Michael Turner, for sure. So I want Devontae to be there, and I want him to be healthy. And all reports that we're hearing is that he looks like his old self. He's cutting and running and catching passes, and I think it's going to be super important with Cutter back in the fold for sure. But that's what has me excited about Ito. Now, when you had the Devontae and Coleman aspect, they were very different styles, right? Coleman was a one cut and go kind of guy. Now, he got better as he went on, but you could see what the league necessarily thought of Coleman. He only got a 2-year, $10 million deal, and that was not even a deal that the Falcons were even trying to offer him. Okay, so where Coleman was a home run threat every time he touched the ball, he was really kind of one-dimensional, right? Where Devontae can make you miss in the hole, can make you miss behind the line, can break you off in open field. He was a lot more of a dynamic runner than Coleman. And I think we have that in Ito Smith. It reminds me a lot of the after we drafted Julio Jones. Now, I'm not comparing him on talent-wise, but I'm talking about just situation. You had Roddy White and you had Julio Jones. And then the second year, it was like more Roddy White, Julio Jones, right? And then eventually for about 3 or 4 years, they were 1A, 1B. Like irreversible, 1A, 1B. And then eventually Julio Jones surpassed him, okay? Running backs have a lot shorter of a lifespan, so I think that might happen a little quicker, is what I'm saying. Depending on how Ito Smith does this year, it might determine whether Freeman's on the team next year. I hate to say it like that, but that's just the truth of the business. So he's one of the ones I'm really keeping my eye on as far as training camp and preseason goes. I want to see how he runs, because you got to figure he's going to get a good chunk of the share of the carry, especially in preseason, because they're not going to want to expose Devontae to any unnecessary injuries, I wouldn't think. All right, so now we're going to bounce over to the defensive side. The defensive side, one of the guys that I really got my eye on, and I want to see, I think he could become that household name, and in this offseason, he's kind of become one of the forgotten names that not too many people are talking about, and that's none other than Deadrin Senat. Okay, now Deadrin Senat, I think he might be, because only the coaches know. They're the only ones who've seen him this offseason, seen the work he's put in, seen him so far. He might be one of the reasons why we haven't rushed out to get a defensive tackle. You see what I'm saying? So I'm really interested to see if he can either anchor next to Grady, or if nothing else, like back up Grady, like a solid backup, right? So you throw him in the mix with Jack Crawford and Tyler Davidson and Grady Jarrett. the defensive tackles is looking a little stronger than what it may previous have looked. But I think a lot of people have forgotten necessarily about DAndre Swift. If you get time, go back and watch some of his games in college, and he was a force at times. And I think if Dan Quinn can harness that, if nothing else, I think he can become a very formidable run stopper in the middle, very formidable zero tech type nose tackle guy. So he's one of the ones that I'm really interested to see what kind of step he takes coming into his second season. That's when you really got to start to see, what these guys are made of, right? A lot of guys hit a sophomore slump, but I don't think that's been as prolific in the past few years because you don't hear pundits talking about it as much, right? You don't hear guys talking about that sophomore slump as much as they did, 6-7 years ago. Because I think conditioning is getting better, training is getting better, and that's from the college level on up. So I don't think it's as much of a shock to these guys. And I think a lot of guys start to perform better in their second season because they get, a full off season of NFL nutrition and a full off season of, NFL weight room and stuff like that. Not having to worry about college or classes or whatever. They can focus on their craft. So DAndre Swift is a guy who I think can very much make a bigger name for himself. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the other side, back to the offensive side. A guy who I'm really interested to see what he does for us this year now is our first round pick, Chris Lindstrom. Now you're going to say to me, well, JR, of course you're interested to see what he's going to do. He could be a potential linchpin. Yes, very much so. He could very much be a solidifying force in that right guard position that we haven't had in a while. Okay? I mean, you had Chris Chester a couple seasons ago who did a good job, an admirable job. But, once he retired, it's been kind of a revolving door right there. So I'm really excited to see how quickly they install Chris Lindstrom in as our right guard. Now you can say, well, what about Caleb McRae? Hey man, if Caleb McRae can lock down that right tackle position and earn that right tackle position in his first year, awesome. I think that'll be great. But I won't be upset at all if one of the either James Carpenter or Jamon Brown end up with that right tackle position, at least to start the season. That wouldn't bother me one bit because I don't like the idea necessarily of having two rookies side by side day one. One rookie, you have him sandwiched in between, a veteran and Alex Mack. I think that could be a great scenario. But to put two rookies side by side, I'm not necessarily as thrilled about that right out the gate. But now look, don't get it twisted. If Caleb McGarry comes in and just dominates and earns that spot, then dude, get it done. I'm happy for him. But the one that I'm really excited about is Chris Lindstrom because you get a solid right tackle now. Matt can really concentrate on just his job, not necessarily having to worry about the guy to his right or the guy to his left. I think that offensive line could make a huge difference, and I think that how quick Chris Lindstrom catches on, I think is a possible key to that success. All right, so back to the defense. All right, the guy who I'm really, really excited about on the defensive side, and kind of by default, he kind of has to, is Isaiah Oliver. Rocky's gone. Alford's gone. I hated to see him go because I really liked Rocky, but I don't know how many times I was watching TV and screaming my head off because, he got handsy. Man's got all the talent in the world, but doesn't trust his abilities, in a sense, from what I can see. What do I know, right? But, it just seemed like he would get too freaked out, think he's, out of position, and then go to grab a guy, and bam, there goes a PI. To a point where it seemed like refs were looking for him to have a pass interference, right? He started to gather that reputation. And statistically, last year was probably one of his worst years. Uh, so that led to him getting released. But in steps Isaiah Oliver, who had really good tape out of Colorado, and is the prototypical Dan Quinn corner. Long, tall, long arms, stuff like that. So I'm really interested after the Jalen Collins experiments flamed out because he couldn't pass a drug test. I'm really curious to see what Dan Quinn does with his prototypical corner and handing over the reins, especially with Trufant on the other side locking that down. Because I think he only allowed like 3 or 4 touchdowns last year. So as far as he's back to himself, as far as pass breakups and things of that nature. So so Isaiah Oliver is one of the ones I'm really really interested in seeing his growth from year 1 to year 2. And if he can lock down that right side, then we could get back to having a real good strong tandem on the corners there. All right, so that's 2 on each side. So let's go back to the offensive side, and a guy who I'm curious about. I don't know if it's going to necessarily make huge waves because you've got Jones and Sanu and Ridley. Those guys are locks. Those guys are stone locked in. But the one that I'm curious about is Justin Hardy. Not necessarily is he going to make a leap because I think he is what he is, but can Russell Gage push him? That's the one I'm interested in. That's one I'm interested to see what he does. Does Russell Gage make an impact on special teams and push Hardy? Because if he could push Hardy and either A, bring out the better in Hardy, or B, surpass him and become that reliable 4th receiver and gadget kind of guy, because Dirk Cutter likes his gadget guys. You remember Anton Smith only get 2 or 3 touches a game, but those touches, boy, he was gone. So I'm real interested in what Russell Gage can bring to the table. He got a lot of one-on-one time, so to speak, in the OTAs and stuff like that, with Julio Jones sitting out and some of those other guys not being there. So he got more reps, right, than he probably would have gotten. So I'm interested to see if he's going to make the best use of those reps, right? And see if he can actually carve him out a role and push him up into that 4th receiver position, right? So that's, those, the offensive side is a little harder to like pick through because it's pretty much set, right? You got your quarterback, obviously. You got your, most of your offensive linemen, and your top 3 or 4 receivers are pretty much locked down. So there's not a ton of spots. So I'm really interested to see what kind of role Russell Gage can carve out in this offense, and does he have to supplement it with, being on special teams, either returning kicks or punts or whatever. So he's one that I'm personally keeping an eye on. All right, so back to the defensive side. Now this is the last defensive guy. The one I'm really wondering if he's going to like cement himself as a Falcon going forward, or if he's just going to be okay. We can move on from him after this year. But that's DeAndre Campbell. He was really intriguing coming out of Minnesota, and I think at times he has been an excellent linebacker for us, and I really hope we lock him up. But with a lot of the rumors going around and a lot of the signs pointing that we're moving back to maybe more of a 3-4 defense, it might be interesting to having Devondre coming in on more blitzes and more, pressures coming from him, which he did quite a bit in college. He was very much a jack of all trades in college. So it'd be real interesting to see what Dan Quinn can get out of him, in those 3-4 packages and mixing stuff up there. So can he cement himself as a Falcon going forward? Can he make a case that he is irreplaceable? And that'll be really interesting to see if he can pull that off, if he can make that case, because I think he can. I'm really excited about. I like his attitude. Anytime those quotes come up out of him, it's the type of quotes that I like. He's not satisfied with losing. He's always trying to get better. he's always working on his pass rush as much as he's working on his coverage, and I think that makes him a versatile weapon. And I'm hoping that with Dan Quinn back at the helm, he can use that versatility because Dan Quinn seems to really value that versatility. So I really hope that DeAndre gets a chance to shine this year, and show that he is, just as worthy as Deion Jones about getting a new contract. All right, so those are the six players that I'm excited about. I'm really excited about coming into this training camp. I'm really, really excited to see what they do and what they put forth, during the preseason and on into the season. Now, I'm going to pick one make and one break on each side of the ball. So I'm going to give you four more guys, right, total, that I think are in the verge of making and breaking, right? And for the offensive side, I think the make this year, or this make time, is Luke Stoker. Speaking of that versatility again, if Stoker can be that fullback, that other tight end, that H back, I think that he can end up being a versatile weapon. Because you remember in 2016, those times you had Toilolo just leak out. He spent all game blocking, but every now and again he'd just leak out. Nobody would go with him, and bam, you had or a touchdown or what have you. And I think Luke Stoker could be that for us, right? He could really be a chess piece in the vein of, well, is he blocking at the fullback position, or is he, is he gonna go out for a pass or whatever? So he's just an interesting one that I think he could make a real good role for himself this year and beyond. Now, another one who I think this is a definite break year for him is Justin Hardy, who I mentioned before. I mean, we kind of know what Hardy is at this point. I was really high on him when he was coming out of Eastern Carolina, but it seems like he's had a real tough time just transferring to the NFL game as far as running routes and stuff like that. He's got good, but he doesn't necessarily always seem to be where he needs to be. I mean, he's a good blocker, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't seem to catch that trust that Matt Ryan has with some of the other guys. So now on the other side of the ball, make or break, right? I think it's a break year for Mr. Vic Beasley. I hate that, man. I hate it big time because I felt like, we finally got our pass rush. And maybe moving to this 3-4 defense will, bolster his ability more and play to his strength. And maybe it'll turn into a make year for him. But at this junction, I just don't see it. A lot of the reports coming out is that, he doesn't have necessarily the greatest work ethic. And if there's one thing I do know about the NFL, your work ethic will take you far, further than anything else. Your God-given talent's only going to take you so far. So I really hope that this year ends up being a make year for Mr. Beasley, but I think it's probably going to end up being a break year. Honestly, I don't expect to see him back next year. Now, we're going to end this on a positive note. I think my make year, this year for sure is going to be Ricardo Allen. I think he's going to be the Falcons' comeback player of the year. I think Dan Quinn's going to rejoice and sing from the heavens that he's got his general back in the backfield there, his coach on the field, for his defense. I mean, Rico knows that defense inside and out, and I think he's an extension of Dan Quinn on that field. And I think it really showed last year when he went down that they didn't have him, and that was real tough. So I think this year you're really going to get to see why they paid Rico Allen, you know what I'm saying, and locked him up. And I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to see Ricardo Allen get back out on the field and start, commanding his soldiers the way a general does looking over a battlefield, So that's what I got for y'all this time. I mean, that's my make or break players. Those are the players I think you need to keep an eye on going into training camp and preseason because I think those players are going to have a real pivotal role in how this season turns out. And with that being said, next time we see you will probably be after our report from training camp, maybe, unless something happens between now and then. But thank y'all so much for the love y'all been showing us over the past couple weeks, with welcoming Toby back the way y'all have. And, as always, folks, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. We love interacting with y'all. And, y'all are the reason why we do it and the reason why we keep doing it. And so I just want y'all to know that, that y'all are awesome. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.